Part 38. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shen. Chapter 371. Sister Beauty. Nayuniu screamed. The little girl's movements were faster than her words. She almost didn't think about it and rushed forward to block Luomiran. Luomiran was about to fall to the ground, but it was Nayuniu who blocked it. She just staggered a step and tilted her body, and she had stabilized her body. Poor Nayuniu, it was like she was Luomiran's cushion. The tiny little person had to bear too much. "Oh, my little ancestor, why did you fall down again?" Li Shunfu happened to come out and saw the scene clearly. He was so scared that he immediately threw the whisk in his hand aside and ran over to help the little girl up from the ground. "I'm fine, uncle, don't worry about me," Nayuniu said obediently. But the more the little girl acted like this, the more anxious Li Shunfu became. He hurriedly lifted Nayuniu's left arm. The originally white and plump arm was now covered with a large area of bruises, which looked very scary. Li Shunfu's eyes were almost filled with heartache, and he said, "How come you don't know how to feel sorry for yourself, kid?" Li Shunfu felt that Luomiran fell, so why did she let Nayuniu use herself to protect her from disaster? Luomiran, who was standing aside, also looked at Nayuniu with a guilty look on her face at this time. "My dear, sister is an adult, and falling once is nothing. Don't protect sister next time." Nayuniu smiled innocently when she heard the two people's caring words, and said, "I don't know why I want to protect sister." Nayuniu felt that her body moved by herself, and she didn't know what she was doing at all. But it was these words that moved Luomiran to tears, and she said, "Nayuniu really cares about me." Luomiran felt that children would not be fake, and love cannot be deceived. The noise here had already alarmed the Queen Mother. She was helped out by Nanny's son and just happened to hear this. She couldn't help but feel a little sour in her heart, but her concern for the child prevailed. "Li Shunfu, what are you still standing there for? Hurry up and ask someone to summon the imperial physician. Don't you see what has happened to Niu's arm?" the Queen Mother scolded. Li Shunfu hurriedly agreed and immediately sent his apprentice to the imperial hospital. The Queen Mother took the initiative to lead Niu's hand and walked inside, and glared at concubine Luo, who was at a loss beside her. Concubine Luo knew that it was because she hurt Niu that the Queen Mother disliked her, but she still followed behind and entered Shaokong Palace with a white eye. "Queen Mother, it's just a little bruise. It will be healed in 2 days. I often do this at home." Niu, the person involved, did not understand the tension between the Queen Mother and concubine Luo at all. The Queen Mother frowned and asked, "Do you often do this at home?" Niu nodded vigorously and said in a matter-of-fact tone, "My grandmother said that all children are like this, and this is called growing up with bumps and bruises." Before the Queen Mother married into the royal family, she was also a pampered official daughter. She didn't know that this is how children were raised in the folk. From childhood to adulthood, she rarely needed to do things by herself. She took 8 steps at a time, and the people serving her could circle around her several times. Stumbling and bruising was a very distant thing for her. "Queen Mother, since there is nothing serious, can we eat first? Niu is hungry." Niu threw herself on the Queen Mother and acted like a spoiled child. The Queen Mother looked at the little girl's arms moving freely, and it seemed that she was not affected too much, and she was relieved. She turned her head and looked at concubine Luo, feeling uncomfortable, and wanted to send her away. Niu took the initiative to stop her and said, "Grandma Queen Mother, Sister Myron seems very tired today and seems not feeling well. Can we ask the imperial physician to treat her?" The Queen Mother always had no choice but to say, "Okay, since my dear said so, how could I not agree?" Lady Luo was indeed not feeling well today. Her chest was stuffy and her mind was muddy. Only when she heard Niu talking did she feel that her mind was clear. She did not think about the pain at first, but thought that she did not sleep well. When she heard Niu Niu say this, her heart was lifted up at this time, and she could not help wondering if she was really sick. After Niu Niu ate 3 ginger cakes, the young imperial physician on duty at noon came in sweating under the scorching sun with a medicine box. As soon as he bowed, the Queen Mother waved her hand and urged, "Don't waste time, come and see the child." The young imperial physician honestly stepped forward, took Niu Niu's pulse, and asked how Niu Niu was injured. When he heard that it was just a slight fall, the young doctor was stunned for a moment. "Such a large bruise, our baby has suffered a great sin," the Queen Mother muttered. The young doctor looked at the bruise on the white and tender arm, pondered for a moment, and then said, "Queen Mother, this bruise is just scary to look at. It won't hurt if you don't touch it. It will be fine after a while." The doctor really didn't think it was a big deal. But the Queen Mother said, "It looks so serious, how could it be a problem? Hurry up and prescribe medicine." The doctor lowered his eyebrows. According to his thinking, he thought that since it didn't hurt, he didn't need to prescribe medicine, but he didn't know the rules of the palace. As long as the masters of the harem summoned him, he would prescribe 1 or 2 sets of taifang even if there was nothing wrong. This was done just to make the masters of the harem feel at ease. "Queen Mother, I don't want to drink bitter medicine," Niu whispered. But the Queen Mother said, "Good medicine tastes bitter, you have to take it." The imperial physician still felt that there was no need to prescribe medicine, so he just said, "Empress Dowager, since the little girl doesn't want to take medicine, I will go back and make her some plasters, the effect will be the same." Niu's eyes lit up immediately. The Queen Dowager frowned slightly. The imperial physician continued, "Empress Dowager, the little girl suffered an external injury, so it should be treated with external injury methods. It was just a purple mark, and the imperial physician felt guilty about using the word external injury." "Okay, then let's do as you say," the Queen Dowager said reluctantly. Seeing that everyone was about to leave, Niu pulled the Queen Dowager's sleeve and looked at concubine Luo beside her. The Queen Dowager was reminded and remembered this. "Take a look at concubine Luo, she looks pale, and I think she has heat stroke." The young imperial physician responded respectfully, and after concubine Luo sat down, he asked questions while taking her pulse. But he cut off his right hand and then his left hand, and questioned him carefully for a long time, but his brows were still furrowed, his face was full of confusion, and occasionally a trace of disbelief flashed across his face. Lady Luo couldn't help but be worried and asked, "Dr. Wang, what is my illness? Just tell me directly." The abnormality here even attracted the attention of the Queen Mother. "What did you see?" After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shen. Chapter 372. Dr. Wang was only in his early 20s. Although he came from a medical family, he had only been admitted to the Imperial Hospital not long ago, and his experience was far less than that of other old doctors. He didn't know whether he doubted Lady Luo's pulse or his own medical skills. The Queen Mother saw Niu's anxious face and said to the doctor, "Just say it. It doesn't matter if you make a wrong diagnosis." Dr. Wang made up his mind and said, to reply to the Queen Mother, "The pulse is like a bead, which is suspected to be a happy pulse." When the Queen Mother heard this, her face was blank for a moment. Dr. Wang raised his head with a slight tremor, and looked at the Queen Mother's expression, and his heart was suddenly in turmoil. After a long while, Niu pulled the doctor's sleeve, and the old man came back to his senses from the huge surprise. He stared at Dr. Wang with burning eyes and asked, "Really? Really, is it a happy pulse?" Dr. Wang shook his head. The Queen Mother's face fell immediately. Dr. Wang said cautiously, "Empress Dowager, this young lady is still young, it seems that she is less than a month old. I am not 100% sure, but I think she is 70% pregnant." The Queen Mother's expression gradually warmed up, and said, "It's good to be 70% sure, Li Shunfu, you go to the Imperial Hospital in person and invite a few more people. In the impression of everyone, doctors are more convincing when they are older than when they are younger." Li Shunfu naturally understood what the Queen Mother meant. He went there in person in the middle of the day, so he could naturally invite those lazy old doctors to come. Even though it has not been confirmed yet, the Queen Mother's attitude has changed. She said to concubine Luo, "Don't be too restrained. Eat while waiting, don't starve yourself." Concubine Luo suffered from the summer and had no appetite. The Queen Mother didn't care whether she had an appetite before, but now the Queen Mother was so meticulous that she wanted to feed concubine Luo. "Even if you don't have an appetite, you should pick some food you like. You almost fell down before, wasn't it because you didn't eat enough that you couldn't stand steadily? Your body is important, don't you know," said the Queen Mother. The last time concubine Luo heard the Queen Mother speak so gently was when she was facing Niuniu. Now she was flattered and trembling with fear when she received this treatment. She knew that the Queen Mother's good attitude came from her belly. She couldn't help but worry, what if she was not pregnant? Would the Queen Mother be angry and embarrassed? Fortunately, concubine Luo's worries did not last too long. Li Shunfu went to invite them personally. Even at noon, a group of old doctors who should have been enjoying their old age were forced to run over with their medicine boxes. A group of people surrounded concubine Luo for a long time, and then gathered together to whisper for a long time. In the end, it was the most experienced doctor who stood up. To reply to the Queen Mother, "This young lady is still young. Now we think there is a high probability that she is pregnant. If we wait for about 10 days, we can be more sure." The Queen Mother glanced at Wang Tai beside her. A group of old doctors gathered together and also thought that Luo Myron was pregnant. She knew the morality of the imperial doctors in the palace. They said that the pregnancy was almost certain. "Okay, I already know about this. Is there anything to pay attention to now?" asked the Queen Mother. The old doctor said, "The weather is very hot. This young lady seems to have signs of heat stroke. Just pay more attention to it on weekdays. No medicine is needed for the time being." The Queen Mother frowned slightly. "Don't you need to take the pregnancy medicine?" Luo Myron suspected that she was pregnant. The Queen Mother didn't want any accidents to happen. The old doctor's mood was similar to that of the Queen Mother. It was no big deal for the Imperial Hospital to fool around with typing. Now that it involved a pregnant woman, they didn't dare to act recklessly. It was the first time in many years that someone in the Emperor's harem was really pregnant. If she was not careful and lost the baby, I'm afraid the entire Imperial Hospital would be buried with the fetus. This young lady is strong and healthy. It would be bad to use medicine rashly. Wait until the fetus is stable, and then we will consider using medicine." After the old doctor said this, he stretched out his sleeve and wiped the sweat on his forehead. The Queen Mother didn't continue to worry about it. After a group of doctors left, the Queen Mother asked Li Shunfu, "How much ice is used for the position of beauty?" Although Li Shunfu didn't care about these, he was also clear about this matter and replied, 1 ice per day. There were too many people in the palace, and the position of beauty was low enough. Even if Luo Myron was now favored by the emperor, she couldn't increase her share out of thin air. The Queen Mother thought for a moment and said, "How about Lady Luo move to the side hall of Shaokong Palace?" Lady Luo's eyes lit up immediately when she heard this, and she said, "I'd love to move to Shaokong Palace and get the blessing of the Queen Mother." Niuniu was also very happy, only Nani's son hesitated for a moment, and finally reminded, "Queen Mother, if a pregnant woman moves, she may disturb the fetus." After the Queen Mother heard Nani's son's explanation, she remembered that there was such a saying among the people. For her grandchildren who had not yet been confirmed to exist, the Queen Mother did not dare to take any risks. "In that case, then we won't move, but the palace servants around you haven't served you for too long, and I'm still not at ease, the Queen Mother said to Lady Luo worriedly. Lady Luo was almost killed by Li Ziyi. She knew that after the news of her pregnancy spread, she would definitely become the focus of the harem. As long as she gave birth to this child steadily, no matter whether it was a boy or a girl, she would have someone to rely on in the future, so it was natural that she would be cautious. Empress Dowager, I am not a smart person and have little foundation in the harem. I beg you to protect me. Concubine Luo knelt down on the spot. Get up, the Queen Mother was anxious, fearing that kneeling would cause harm to the fetus. Don't worry, you are carrying my grandson in your belly. I will definitely protect you well, and will definitely ensure that you give birth safely, and will not treat you badly in the future, the Queen Mother promised. Niu watched for a long time and said, Grandma Queen Mother, since Myron's sister can't move in, can you send her more ice? Niu was still thinking about this matter. The Queen Mother immediately said, Li Shunfu, you tell the Ministry of Internal Affairs to say that concubine Luo has served meritorious, and her share will be provided according to the imperial concubine in the future. Only the share was raised, but the position was not promoted, but concubine Luo was very happy. The amount of ice used by the imperial concubine every day was enough to keep her cool all day, and she didn't have to suffer from the heat anymore. Now that the pregnancy has not been confirmed, the Queen Mother dare not do too much. If the news can be concealed, the Queen Mother tries not to let outsiders know, and only notified the Emperor. The Emperor was originally dealing with government affairs, but after receiving the news, he didn't care about anything else and ran over in the scorching heat. Mother, is this true? The Emperor's eyes were surprisingly bright. The Queen Mother nodded, it's almost certain. Niu quickly added, the imperial doctors said that we need to wait another 10 days to confirm it. Even though it was not 100% sure, the Emperor was so happy that he didn't know what to do. After years of anticipation, it came true. He even couldn't help but suspect that he was in a dream. The Queen Mother did not forget to ask for credit for Niu. This time it was all thanks to Niu. If she hadn't blocked it, concubine Luo would have fallen. Emperor, you have to give Niu a big favor. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shen. Chapter 373. When the Emperor heard what the Queen Mother said, he immediately said, Niu, no wonder they say you are a lucky baby. This time, you are really a great contributor to the palace. Niu tilted her head and smiled shyly, and said, I didn't do anything, and I don't know why I blocked that blow. The credit should not go to me. The little girl was really modest, but when she fell into the ears of the royal mother and son, her tone changed. The Queen Mother said very happily, this is destiny. Niu doesn't know why she did this, but God bless this child. The Emperor also liked this omen very much. He even thought that the woman in Luo Mei's belly might be the future emperor, so she turned bad luck into good luck. This child is destined to you, so I asked you to protect him, the Emperor said to Niu with a smile. Niu said casually, I only hope that the beautiful sister can give birth to the baby safely. She knew very well that as long as Luo Myron's child was born, she would no longer have to stay in the palace. Although the Queen Mother was very kind to her, she still preferred to stay at home. Elderly people like to hear auspicious words most. When Niu said this, the Queen Mother held the little girl in her arms and felt that no matter how rare it was not enough. Your mouth is like honey. You are such a clever little ghost. The Emperor also looked at the scene with a smile. Luo Myron's pregnancy has not yet been confirmed, but the Emperor's rewards are delivered to her hands like water. However, the palace servants sent by the Queen Mother do their work carefully. No matter how good these things are, Luomiran only needs to take a look at them and then put them in the warehouse. For fear of there are some things that are not good for her hidden inside, and they are ready to be dealt with by herself after she gives birth. Similarly, Niu Niu, a great hero, also received many rewards. Gold, stone, and jade articles were almost piled up in the room where Niu Niu lived before. You should register all these treasures so that they can be used as dowry for Niu Niu when she gets married in the future, the Queen Mother told the maid serving Niu Niu. Grandma Sun said with a smile, for ordinary girls, it is already very honorable to have a gift from the emperor in their dowry. We, Niu Niu, have not yet reached the age of marriage, and the dowry is already so generous. In the future, we will still have such a generous dowry. I don't know which man is cheaper. She said it casually, but when the Queen Mother heard it, her heart moved and she couldn't help but start to pick on her grandnephew. But after just thinking about it for a moment, the Queen Mother immediately shook her head. In fact, her own family knew about her family affairs, and the children of her mother's family were all unsatisfactory. Besides, the parents of her grandnephew probably also wanted to join a wealthy family. Shen Changfeng's biological grandson is actually suitable, but it's a pity that the age difference between the two children is too big. When Niu Niu gets married, the AI family will definitely marry her personally, but we can't let just anyone coax her away easily, the Queen Mother said with a smile. There was some disturbance in the palace, and it didn't take long for the whole palace to know about it. Concubine Xian was the first to come over to inquire about the news. And, is it true that Luomiran is pregnant? Concubine Xian asked nervously. The Queen Mother looked at her niece lovingly and said, it's not confirmed yet, but it's almost certain. A trace of loneliness flashed in Xian Fei's eyes. The Queen Mother then said, this matter is still hidden, so don't talk nonsense to the outside world. You are now in charge of the harem. If any rumors spread, I am afraid that the emperor will not be the first to spare you. Concubine Xian nodded and said, don't worry, Aunt, I'm not an ignorant person. Your Majesty can have a child, even if it doesn't come out of my belly, it will be good for me. The Queen Mother knew that her niece was kind-hearted. Except for the slight rift with the imperial concubine in the past, she had a good relationship with the other concubines in the palace and had never had any fight for favor. Just think openly. It's better to let the emperor's biological son inherit the throne than to be the heir from a sideline who doesn't know his background, the Queen Mother said. Concubine Xian nodded vigorously and said, Aunt, don't worry, I will do my best to help Luo give birth to a child safely. The Queen Mother had a vague idea in her mind and hinted to her niece, Luo is young and ignorant. After giving birth to a child, there will be many things that I need your help with. People in the palace would listen deeply when they were told. Naturally, Concubine Xian couldn't help but think deeply at this moment. She thought that the Queen Mother wanted her to become the adoptive mother of her child. This thought passed through her mind for a moment, and she asked the Queen Mother again, Aunt, Luomiran often stays with Niu Niu. I heard that she almost fell down before, but was blocked by Niu Niu before she was okay. Is it true? The Queen Mother nodded. Compared to robbing other people's children, Concubine Xian still wanted to give birth to one herself. Concubine Xian is 27 years old this year, and many women of this age are still giving birth. And, it turns out that Niu Niu is really a lucky baby. She must have brought this child. Please love me and let her live in my palace for a while, it is too cold in a palace without children. Concubine Xian shed tears. The Queen Mother had not thought of this before and said, but Luomiran doesn't live with Niu Niu either. Concubine Xian was already a little stunned at this time, and immediately said, she can get pregnant even if we don't live together. If we really want to live together, we will definitely get pregnant faster. The Queen Mother said, there are still people living in your palace, and besides, Niu Niu didn't choose you at the beginning. Concubine Xian was speechless. She couldn't help but wonder if she was destined to be childless. The Queen Mother sighed and said, That's all. It's not convenient for Luo Mei to continue to pick up and drop off the children in this situation. You have to work harder every day from now on. It was obviously a hard job to pick up and drop off the children, but concubine Xian was so happy that she danced with joy. When Niu Niu woke up the next morning, she saw Qin Jingshu looking at her by the bed. Niu Niu tilted her head in confusion, rubbed her eyes, and said, "Am I still asleep? Why did I dream that Jingshu was waiting for me to get up?" Niu Niu collapsed and wanted to continue sleeping. Qin Jingshu yawned, grabbed Niu Niu's hand, and said, "Don't sleep, it's getting late. I will come to school with you every day in the future." When the palace maids helped Niu Niu change her clothes, she saw a face that was extremely enthusiastic. "My dear, you finally got up. What do you want to eat in the morning?" "Your mother will help you pick up the dishes," concubine Xian said with a smile. Niu Niu looked at her friend in confusion. The little girl couldn't figure out why she had a mother concubine when she woke up. Concubine Xian picked up Niu Niu and asked her to sit on the chair. She picked up the chopsticks and served the little girl personally. "Mother insisted on serving you food, saying she was taking care of you," Qin Jingshu said. Niu Niu looked puzzled. She was afraid that her friend would be unhappy. After all, concubine Xian was Qin Jingshu's adoptive mother. Qin Jingshu reluctantly reminded, "Niu Niu, tell me what you want to eat, otherwise she will keep asking." After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shenshen. Chapter 374. Qin Jingshu obviously had this experience before. She still remembered the first day she had dinner with concubine Xian. Concubine Xian was like a mother who had just found her child. She wanted to ask hundreds of questions during the meal. Such meticulousness allowed concubine Xian to know her adopted daughter's taste in the shortest time. After Qin Jingshu said many times that she preferred to pick up the dishes by herself, concubine Xian finally stopped worrying about it. Niu Niu could only say, "I want to eat ginger cake." Concubine Xian stretched out her chopsticks to pick up a piece of ginger cake for Niu Niu, and said, "Anything else? There is a whole morning of classes. How can one piece of ginger cake be enough?" "Thank you, concubine Xian, but like Jingshu, I prefer to do it myself," Niu Niu said obediently. Concubine Xian only corrected, "You should call her mother." Niu Niu is really not used to calling the emperor's concubine like this. Concubine Xian looked at the little girl expectantly at this time. "Good boy, just call her, otherwise she will keep looking at you," the queen mother said. Niu Niu had no way to deal with these people, so she could only shout, "Xian mother concubine." "Ah," Xian concubine happily responded, as if she could have a child immediately after getting this shout. Qin Jingshu looked at this scene, and suddenly felt sour in her heart. She knew that Xian concubine had been kind to her for a purpose in the past, but she had grown up so much, and even this kind of purposeful kindness was not very common. Xian concubine suddenly saw Qin Jingshu stretching her chopsticks to pick up the mutton spring rolls, and immediately stopped her. "You child, aren't you getting angry? How can you eat this?" Qin Jingshu was stunned when she heard this. She originally thought that Xian concubine would ignore her after having Niu Niu. At this time, seeing that Xian concubine's eyes were still full of concern, the sourness in Qin Jingshu's heart suddenly disappeared. "Eat another bowl of white fungus soup, so that you won't cry again at night that the bubbles in your mouth hurt," Xian concubine advised. The queen mother saw that her niece had Niu Niu and didn't forget the adopted daughter she recognized before, and nodded silently in her heart. After Niu Niu finished this warm breakfast, she and Qin Jingshu were taken to Beijing by concubine Xian's hand. "You two, listen carefully in class. I'll pick you up after class," concubine Xian said. On the way, Niu Niu knew that concubine Xian would take her to school from now on. "What happened to your mother today?" Niu Niu was confused from beginning to end. Qin Jingshu lowered her voice and whispered, my mother wants you to give her a child. Children are fate from heaven, and I can't do anything about it." Niunia was helpless. Qin Jingshu was quite concerned about concubine Xian. After hearing this, she couldn't help asking, "Is it really impossible? Mother has been looking forward to it. If she knew, I don't know how disappointed she would be." Niunia scratched the back of her head and said, "I'm not Guanyin, so it's hard to say." Qin Jingshu sighed and said, "You're right. You are Niunia, not Guanyin Bodhisattva." The child's temper came and went quickly. After they made it clear, the two held hands and went into class happily. 10 days passed in a blink of an eye. The Queen Mother and the Emperor asked the imperial doctors of the imperial hospital to take Luo Myron's pulse almost every day. Every day, they both looked forward to good news. Until the 10th day, the old doctors of the imperial hospital got together to take the pulse and finally gave the Emperor and the Queen Mother a definite answer. "That's great. God bless my son." The Queen Mother was so excited that she burst into tears. The Emperor was full of energy, as if a mountain that had been pressing on his shoulders for many years had been moved away. Decree: Shun Myron has served meritorious service, and is promoted to Shunfei, and is granted the title of the head of Yongfu Palace. The canonization ceremony will be held next summer. After repeated consideration, the Emperor still felt that the word Shun was the best meaning for the title. Next summer, by then, concubine Luo is expected to have finished her confinement. The canonization ceremony was postponed because they were afraid that she would be tired during pregnancy. For this child, who was obtained with great difficulty, the Emperor and the Empress Dowager could not be too careful. Niunia was also very happy. She threw herself on the Empress Dowager and asked, "Grandma Empress Dowager, Myron's sister is really pregnant, so can I leave the palace to watch the ceremony?" Niunia has always been thinking about Lu Xiru's marriage. The Empress Dowager did not expect that such a young person would have such a good memory. Although she was reluctant, Niu was only going out of the palace for 1 day, so the Queen Mother nodded in the end. "Okay, it's hard for you to remember it." Niu not only sought benefits for herself, but also remembered her friends. What about the others? Can they also go out of the palace to reunite with their families for 1 day? The Queen Mother hesitated. It was okay for the others, but Miss Li San was still living in the palace of Li Ziyi. She was afraid that Li Ziyi would use Miss Li San to pass on the news. "Queen Mother, please." Niu saw that the Queen Mother was silent for a long time, and immediately acted like a spoiled child. The Queen Mother sighed and said, "Okay, since you begged me like this, how could I not agree?" In Guanju Palace, although Li Ziyi was still dressed in gorgeous clothes and had pearls and jade on her head, she aged at a speed visible to the naked eye after being demoted and confined. She was in her 30s, and she looked like she was in her 20s in the past, but now she looked like the same age as the Emperor. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Li Ziyi held a piece of paper, her face full of madness. The entire Guanju Palace was filled with people sent by the Emperor and the Empress Dowager, and her people had gone through a lot of trouble to pass on the news that concubine Luo was pregnant. "My queen, what's wrong with you?" the voice of the little palace maid came from outside the house. "Get out! Get out of here!" Li Ziyi cursed fiercely at the people outside the house. When the little palace maid heard what she said, she didn't ask any more questions. It was quiet again outside the room. Li Ziyi looked at the note in his hand steadily, his eyes full of madness. Why? Why? Why did it end up like this again? Li Ziyi tore the note into pieces, stuffed it into his mouth and swallowed it. "I can't accept my fate. I can never accept my fate. I want to be the queen and the unique Queen Mother." Li Ziyi's eyes were stern, and the expression on his face was changing. "Auntie," Miss Li San's voice sounded outside. "Li Ziyi now has a bad temper. When she gets angry, she often beats and scolds her servants. Her maids dare not get too close to her. Only when facing Miss Li, Does her temper calm down a little? Come in, Li Ziyi said. Miss Li San naturally understands that Li Ziyi is in a very bad situation now, and the Li family is all in harm's way, and she also wants to help. Auntie, there is a holiday in school tomorrow. The Queen Mother allows us to leave the palace for a day. If you have anything to say to my father, I can convey it to you. Li Ziyi's eyes lit up. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shen. Chapter 375. Li Ziyi asked Miss Li San to go to the palace to recruit children and pray for blessings, originally to gather the number of people and to prove that her Li family was no different from those high-ranking families in the capital. She didn't expect that this accidental move would turn out to be her life-saving straw. Good boy, my aunt is counting on you now, and our Li family all depends on you. Li Ziyi put his high hats on his niece's head one after another. Miss Li San has followed her aunt as a role model since she was a child. She also wants to be the glory of the family. Now that she has a heavy responsibility, she immediately looks like she is honored. Lu Xiru's wedding day came in a blink of an eye. Niu didn't need anyone to remind her and got up early in the morning. I don't see you getting up early on weekdays, but today I didn't need anyone to remind me. The little lazy pig changed gender on its own, the Queen Mother joked with a smile. A look of embarrassment appeared on Niu's face and she said, I thought about getting up early, but I actually got up early. The Queen Mother praised, no wonder they say you are a little lucky star. It can be seen that you get whatever you want. Niu tilted her head and asked, Grandma, Queen Mother, can I leave the palace directly now? You don't need breakfast, the Queen Mother asked. Niu shook her head and said, I made an agreement with my father yesterday that I will eat the family's wontons this morning. My family must be waiting for me. When the Queen Mother heard this, she immediately lost all other opinions and said, Okay, don't miss this. Niu stood up and said goodbye to the Queen Mother. The old man pretended again and said, You are a good boy. Since you like your Aunt Lu so much, the AI family should also give her a big favor. No matter how Niu asked, the Queen Mother always looked mysterious. When she saw Shen Ling accompanying Niu out of the palace with her own eyes, the Queen Mother couldn't help but sigh and said, Shaokong Palace was originally bustling, but now that Niu has left, it feels like it is mostly empty. Grandma Sun smiled and said, My dear, Niu left the palace in the morning and came back in the evening. She has always been filial. Are you still afraid that she will not come back after leaving the palace? How could the Queen Mother not be afraid, but she also knew in her heart that the Gu family outside the palace was the family that Niu considered in her heart. Are everyone in the Li family ready to watch? The Queen Mother asked. Grandma Sun said immediately, Don't worry, people are stationed everywhere in the Li family to keep an eye on them. If there is any abnormal behavior, they will be able to detect it immediately. The Queen Mother nodded. Grandma Sun complimented her again, My lady, you are very considerate. Instead of just blocking Li San from leaving the palace, you might as well lead the snake out of the hole and see what this big family wants to do. The Queen Mother said, Only those who work as thieves all the time, and no one can guard against thieves all the time. If Li Ziyi stays in the harem for one more day, the AI family will always be worried about it. The Emperor will not be willing to deal with such a poisonous snake no matter what. She is really obsessed with it. Grandma Sun said, Don't worry, as long as we can find the whereabouts of the Li family, Your Majesty will definitely find his way back. The Queen Mother sighed and said, I hope so. Grandma Sun just wanted to bow and retreat. The Queen Mother suddenly said, Take off half of the ice basin in the corner. The Queen Mother didn't know if Niu's departure had taken away the joy in Shaokong Palace. At this time, she only felt that the ice basin was used too much, and the cold feeling in Shaokong Palace was very permeating. As soon as Niu came out of the palace, She immediately saw her father and mother standing in a distance outside a few carriages. The little girl immediately rushed to her parents like a swallow in the forest. "Father, mother." The last time Zhang Yuniang saw the little girl was at a palace banquet. It had been more than 20 days. At that time, there were many people and the time for the two of them to spend time together was limited. Now holding her precious daughter in her arms, Zhang Yuniang suddenly felt extremely at ease. "Younger sister." Hearing this voice, Niu Niu looked towards the carriage. Brothers Gu Yan and Gu Zhao lifted the curtain of the carriage and looked at Niu Niu with smiles on their faces. "Big brother and third brother," Niu Niu said excitedly. Xie Chuan, who was behind the brothers, didn't hear him being called. He was leaning against the wall of the carriage. At this time, he silently stretched his head forward to ensure that the little girl could see him. "Brother Xin Chuan," Niu Niu shouted happily. The corner of Xie Chuan's mouth just raised, but as if he had reacted, he immediately suppressed it and turned it into a slight nod. "I miss you so much. One day without seeing you is like 3 autumns apart. I haven't seen you for more than a month, and it feels like I have been separated from you for 100 years, Niu Niu stretched out her hands and gestured hard. Everyone present couldn't help laughing when they heard this. "My dear, have you missed me?" Shen Changfeng's voice sounded from another carriage. "Brother Changfeng, you came to pick me up today," Niu Niu's eyes were full of surprise. "It's not just me, there are many people here," Shen Changfeng said. After a while, everyone in the carriage behind them poked their heads out. Niu Niu looked over one after another. Not only did Shen Changfeng come, but the Sun family's godfather and godmother also came with Chang Xiao. Only Father Gu and Mrs. Gu did not come. Zhang Yuniang explained, "Your grandparents want to stay with your Aunt Lu at home. She originally wanted to come over, but she is a bride after all and cannot go out casually. It was only after we persuaded her to do so. Niu feels so happy, everyone came to pick me up," Niu expressed her inner thoughts happily. Gu Mingda touched the little girl's forehead and said, "Who makes you the most important treasure in our family?" Niu raised her little head proudly. When riding in the carriage back home, Niu kept lifting the carriage curtain and looking out. Maybe she had stayed in the palace for too long. Even if it was a scene she had seen before, she felt that she could not see enough and everything she saw was new. "My dear, tell me, what is the palace like? Is it more fun than other places? Does the Queen Mother really love you so much? Does she give you whatever you want?" As soon as he got on the carriage, Gu Zhao asked a series of questions. When Niu heard this, she immediately shook her head. "The palace is not good at all. Classes are held at fixed times every day, and I can't go shopping or help grandma. It's so boring." Gu Zhao felt sorry for his sister when he heard this. "I thought you came to the palace to enjoy yourself, but I didn't expect that your life is harder than mine." But Niu said, "There are still many delicious foods in the palace. Whatever I want to eat, the Queen Mother will ask the imperial kitchen to make it for me." Gu Zhao envied again and said, "If I can really eat what I like every day, I am willing to enter the palace." Niu's eyes lit up when she heard this. "Brother, can we exchange? I will go to study with Dr. Yan, and you stay in the palace for me." Gu Zhao took a bite of food, and his face actually showed a moving look. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shen. Chapter 376. Okay, we're home. Gu Zhao, you can't run away from your studies. Niu, you can't change people when entering the palace. Zhang Yuniang scolded the two children with a stern face. Niu and Gu Zhao both looked disappointed, but they also knew that they probably couldn't violate the decision made by Zhang Yuniang. "Wow, my home is so beautiful today," Niu Niu said happily as she got off the carriage. "Today, the entire Gu family is covered with red silk. Mrs. Gu and Dad Gu are waiting at the door." As soon as they see Niu Niu get out of the car, Mrs. Gu immediately holds the little girl in her arms and screams heartily. Okay, our dear baby is still as heavy as a calf, which shows that we are not hungry in the palace," Mrs. Gu said with emotion. In the eyes of the older generation, having enough food is a big deal. As long as they are not hungry, they should not suffer too much grievance. Niu Niu pressed her fair little face against Mrs. Gu's. "Grandma, I miss you so much in the palace." "Baby!" Dad Gu shouted vaguely from the side. Niu Niu immediately said, "Grandpa, I miss you very much too." A satisfied smile appeared on Dad Gu's wrinkled face. "Let's go in quickly." Your Aunt Lu looked outside early in the morning. She has been waiting impatiently at home. She has been talking about it every day. When she knew you weren't coming back, she even wanted to postpone the wedding, Mr. Gu Tai explained. Niu Niu immediately climbed down from her grandma and rushed to the yard where Lu Xiru lived like a cannonball. "Aunt Lu, I'm back." Lu Xiru was wearing a red wedding dress and her hair was covered with gold jewelry. She opened her hands to catch the little girl who rushed into her arms. "If you don't come back, I won't get married," Lu Xiru said with a smile. 11 Niang, who was helping to dress up at the side, heard this and immediately said, "Oh, my good girl, you can't say such depressing words on your big day." Lu Xiru and Niu Niu burst into laughter when they heard this. Ziniang said again, "Miss Lu, please come back and sit down quickly. Your hair hasn't been combed yet." Lu Xiru was forced to sit back again, but she was still thinking about Niu Niu. She took the little girl's hand and asked, "Is there anyone bullying you in the palace?" Although Lu Xiru had long known from Zhang Yuniang that Niu Niu was now favored by the Queen Mother, she still couldn't help but want to ask in person. Niu Niu shook her head, "No one bullies me, everyone likes me." Lu Xiru said, "Of course, our dear baby is the most lovable little girl in the world. Only people who have no vision will dislike you." Niu Niu tilted her head and laughed, and the little girl asked again, "Aunt Lu, have you had breakfast? Are you hungry?" Lu Xiru shook her head and said, "I got up early in the morning and was busy dressing up. I didn't have time to eat at all." Niu Niu immediately frowned and said, "It's so uncomfortable to be hungry. Let's go have breakfast together first, and then come back to dress up." 11 Niang immediately said, "Little girl, you don't know the rules of marriage in Beijing. The bride must go to her husband's house hungry, so as not to bring her mother's family's wealth with her." This was the first time Niu Niu heard this rule. The little girl frowned and said, "But I would rather let Aunt Lu bring her wealth than let her go hungry." 11 Niang didn't know what to say for a moment, but Zhang Yun Niang walked in at that moment and immediately looked at her for help. Zhang Yuniang said, "Let's go and have dinner together. Your brother-in-law and I don't believe these things, so you can eat with confidence." Ziniang suddenly ran out of ideas and said, "You want this for yourselves. I can't stop you. Don't blame me if you lose your fortune later." Lu Xiru didn't dare to eat anymore, but said, "Sister, forget it, it doesn't matter if you are hungry." Zhang Yuniang said, "The capital has its own rules, and Guanglin has its own rules. On the day of my wedding, I had a rare breakfast at my mother's house. Didn't it affect my family's wealth?" Zhang Yuniang carefully recalled that during the years when her natal family became wealthy, it was purely because they adopted Niu Niu. Later, her natal family became ruined only because they lost Niu Niu. Niu Niu was at the side again and said pitifully, "I finally got out of the palace. Aunt Lu will get married soon. She can't even sit down and have a meal together." Lu Xiru couldn't stand the little girl's pitiful look. She said helplessly, okay, I will listen to you. Let's go have breakfast now. But before they even walked out of the room, they saw someone moving a large round table into the yard. While you haven't gone out yet, let's have breakfast with the whole family, right here, Gu Mingda said with a smile. Lu Xiru glanced over and saw that the table was full of people. Brother Shen Changfeng said with a smile, you are Niu Niu's aunt, and you will also be our brother and sister's aunt in the future. Sun Jiaxing and his wife also said, you are Niu Niu's aunt, and you will also be our little sister in the future. If Brother Luo dares to treat you badly, just tell us. Even Xiaxing Chuan, who had always been reticent, said expressionlessly, Auntie, I have great strength and can help you stand out in the future. Mrs. Gu and Daddy Gu also looked at Lu Xiru lovingly at this time. Lu Xiru's eyes were sore. Her ex-husband was not a good person, and the past days were like being soaked in bitter water. If her ex-husband hadn't gone to Fukan to take the exam, and she was lucky enough to meet Zhang Yuniang, she might have been murdered by her ex-husband in a daze. Now she is not only doing business, but also married to a good husband in everyone's eyes, and now there are a lot of people who want to support her. Lu Xiru's eyes fell on Zhang Yuniang and Niu Niu. Her life could change so much because of them. Thank you, I really don't know what to say. Lu Xiru cried. Zhang Yuniang handed Niu Niu a handkerchief, and Niu Niu tiptoed to wipe Lu Xiru's tears. Don't cry, Aunt Lu wants to be the most beautiful bride. If you cry too much, your eyes will be red and it won't look good, the little girl said softly. Lu Xiru stopped crying. The whole family sat together for breakfast, and Niu Niu ate the wontons she had been thinking about. Niu Niu only felt that the wontons at home were fragrant and seemed to be more delicious than before. Your grandma killed 3 chickens and started cooking last night. This morning, I put the wontons in chicken soup. How could it not be delicious? Zhang Yuniang explained with a smile. Father Gu suddenly said, chickens, I. Old Lady Gu said unhappily, I know, you raised chickens specifically for Niu Niu. You old man, you are so confused, and you are afraid that others will take your credit. The people at the table laughed immediately. Niu Niu turned her head and blinked at her grandfather, and Father Gu nodded with satisfaction. Although the chicken soup wontons were delicious, Lu Xiru didn't dare to eat them, for fear that the soup would splash on her. She just ate some cakes and fried food to fill her stomach slightly. Halfway through the morning, the bridesmaid finally dressed Lu Xiru neatly. Coincidentally, at this time, the Luo family's wedding team was already waiting outside the door. Although Zhang Yuniang had always hoped that Lu Xiru would have a good home, she was reluctant to send her sister off to marry. Shopkeeper Luo, also wearing a red wedding dress, assured Zhang Yuniang again and again, don't worry, sister, I will take good care of Xiru. Zhang Yuniang nodded with tears in her eyes. But before the newlyweds left the house, something unexpected happened at the door. The Queen Mother's decree has arrived, someone shouted. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shen. Chapter 377. The Gu family is holding a wedding banquet for their younger sister today. Most of the people who come here to drink are Gu Mingda's colleagues and friends he knows in Beijing. This sudden decree from the Empress Dowager caught everyone off guard. Or a colleague reminded Gu Mingda, Brother Gu, since it is the decree from the Empress Dowager, you should set up an incense table and be respectful. The colleague kindly reminded him because he was afraid that Gu Mingda had just become an official and had not received the decree from the nobles at home, so he was negligent. The person who came to announce the decree was Li Shanfu. He blinked at Niu Niu as soon as he entered the door. He held a decree in his hand and waited for the Gu family to prepare everything. Lu Xiru, whose vision had been blocked by the red veil, had no idea what was going on. She only heard that there was a decree coming. The atmosphere around her made people feel very depressed. She nervously pulled the other end of the red silk. Shopkeeper Luo had been with her for a long time and understood her personality. He immediately took 2 steps towards her. The two of them stood side by side, their clothes stuck together, and they looked very intimate. Shopkeeper Luo lowered his head and whispered to his newlywed wife, "Don't worry, the eunuch who delivered the decree looks smiling, it doesn't look like a bad thing." Although Lu Xiru was relieved, she still asked, "If it's a bad thing, what will you do?" Shopkeeper Luo said softly, "What else can we do? We are already connected with the red silk. In my heart, we have already completed the ceremony. You are my wife. Don't think of breaking off the engagement because of other things. The couple's hearts are together and any difficulties can be overcome." A trace of sweetness flashed through Lu Xiru's heart, but she said worriedly, "I just don't know what the Queen Mother's decree is for." Shopkeeper Luo said, "My brother-in-law also said before that the Queen Mother loves Niuniu very much. She doesn't look at the monk's face but the Buddha's face. Even if she is dissatisfied with us, she will take Niuniu's mood into consideration. It's probably not a bad thing." As the person who is most familiar with Li Shunfu in the audience, Niuniu ran directly to Li Shunfu without anyone urging her. "Uncle Manager, what did the Empress Dowager give?" Niuniu tugged at his sleeve and looked up and asked. The rest of the Gu family was also looking at Li Shunfu eagerly, waiting for his answer. Li Shunfu shook his head and said, "My dear, I can't say anything before the edict is read out, but don't worry, it's not a bad thing anyway." A group of people breathed a sigh of relief. "Today is the big day of marrying my sister. If something really happened, it would be bad." After setting up the incense table with great difficulty, Li Shunfu held the Empress Dowager's edict in both hands, stood up, cleared his throat, and began to read the edict. "Lu, the sister of your Hanlin Academy, Gu Mingda, is outstanding in talent and chastity, pure and virtuous, and in her prime. She is suitable to marry a good husband. Today, I specially grant her marriage to Luo's son in Anzhou, and make a promise to live together forever, and make the two families good." Along with the imperial edict of marriage, there are also a lot of rewards from the Empress Dowager. Coincidentally, all these marriage rewards were given to Lu Xiru as a dowry, and even the marriage decree stated that Lu Xiru was marrying Luo's son. The Queen Mother's intention was very clear. It was both a favor and a support for Lu Xiru. Lu Xiru naturally understood the deep love conveyed by the Queen Mother's decree. Lu Xiru had never seen the Queen Mother, so she was not so arrogant as to think that the Queen Mother granted the marriage because of her. At this moment, she wanted to lift the red veil and take a look at Niuniu. "My dear." Lu Xiru's voice choked. Zhang Yuniang hurriedly sent her daughter over. Aunt Lu Niuniu's soft little hand held Lu Xiru's other hand. "My dear, thank you." Lu Xiru knew very well that after this marriage decree, even if the Luo family still disliked her background, no one would dare to say anything to her, and even on the surface, everyone had to treat her respectfully. "Aunt Lu, I have told the Queen Mother your story many times, and she likes you very much," Niu said in a baby voice. At this time, all the guests who heard this around were surprised. It turned out that the Queen Mother liked to listen to stories. Only Lu Xiru knew very well that this had nothing to do with the story, but because she was Niu's family. Lu Xiru always thought that Niu was the most lovable child in the world. As long as you stay with the little girl for a long time, no one will dislike her. Now that she has received this honor, Lu Xiru naturally thinks that it all comes from Niu. Aunt Lu thanks the Queen Mother, but the one I thank the most is always Niu. Without our good boy, there would be no me today, Lu Xiru said to Niu in a low voice. Niu felt that she was not so good. She never knew how much she helped Lu Xiru. "Good boy, can you take me out?" Lu Xiru suddenly asked. Niu nodded vigorously. After the marriage decree was read, the wedding continued, but before, Zhang Yuniang was holding Lu Xiru's hand, but now it was Niu. The little girl held Lu Xiru's hand and walked slowly toward the door. When they reached the door, shopkeeper Luo gently said to the little girl, "My dear, just send her here. From now on, you have to call me uncle." Naiyunio still looked reluctant. Even Lu Xiru felt that the separation was so difficult. Okay, although your Aunt Lu is married, she will always be your Aunt Lu, Zhang Yuniang coaxed gently. Naiyunio finally let go. Watching the wedding guard go farther and farther away, the red finally disappeared at the corner of the street. The little girl turned around and asked her mother, "Why do you have to leave home? Why can't Uncle Luo join our family?" "Because your Uncle Luo also has his own family, and his family also wants to stay with him," Zhang Yuniang said softly. Naiyunio frowned, thought for a long time, and finally said, "Then even if I get married in the future, I want to find someone who is willing to join our family. I don't want to be separated from you." Zhang Yuniang couldn't help laughing. Gu Mingda heard this and said happily, "Our good boy is smart. He will bring back a bad boy instead of going to someone else's house to suffer." Zhang Yuniang said again, "We will move in a while. When the time comes, we will buy a house close to your Aunt Lu. You can see her anytime you want. The house that the Gu family lives in now is rented to them by manager Luo. They have been in Beijing for so long and have accumulated enough money. The neighbors here are all ordinary people. Seeing that the Gu family lives a good life, they are inevitably jealous. There have been several frictions between neighbors." Gu Mingda thought about it and decided to change his residence. Naiyunio's eyes were shining at this time, and she said to her father, "Then I want to live in the room closest to Aunt Lu." After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shenshen. Chapter 378. The people in the Luo family agreed to this marriage purely because they liked Gu Mingda. He was born in the imperial examination and was favored by the emperor. Now he was responsible for teaching the children of the royal family. Everyone knew that the future emperor might be hidden among these children. Even though there was such a reason, the Luo family was actually not satisfied with this marriage. Gu Mingda was indeed the #1 scholar, and they did work hard to facilitate this marriage. But they couldn't help but think in their hearts, it would be great if Lu Xiru was Huanghua's eldest daughter, and it would be even better if she was Gu Mingda's biological sister. Even though shopkeeper Luo's parents were suppressed by the clan and recognized the marriage with their noses pinched, there was no trace of joy on their faces even though their son was overjoyed today. "How come we haven't come yet and we're about to miss the right time?" Aunt Luo couldn't help but murmured. Although the Gu family has a top pick, it is still a small family. Even on the wedding day, things are not planned carefully, fourth Aunt Luo said in a weird way. When the head of the Luo family heard this, he turned around and gave her a warning look. Fourth Aunt Luo immediately said, "Patriarch, it's not that I mean to speak ill of the Gu family, but the auspicious date for this wedding was specially calculated by someone in charge. Only at this time can we prosper our Luo family." Patriarch Luo's face didn't look very good at this time. "From the third family, send someone to the street corner to see where the people are," the head of the Luo family said. Time passed little by little, and the newcomer still hadn't arrived. "This has missed the auspicious time. Isn't it unlucky?" someone murmured. Shopkeeper Luo's parents' expressions were extremely ugly at this time. His second uncle, "Tell me why the third child is so stubborn. A few years ago, I introduced my niece to him, but he just didn't like it and insisted on finding someone he likes. Now it's better to marry him." A remarried woman, fourth Aunt Luo, went to shopkeeper Luo's parents to talk about old things. Shopkeeper Luo's parents looked down on fourth Aunt Luo's natal niece in the early years, feeling that her family was in decline and not worthy of their son. Now that they hear these words, the couple just feel bitter. His fourth aunt, "I remember that your niece seems to have married into the Lu family. I heard that after 3 years of marriage, the Lu family has only one family for several generations, and the population is booming all of a sudden. Fifth Aunt Luo was standing aside. Shopkeeper Luo's parents felt even more uncomfortable. Even if Lu Xiru was married for the second time, she still couldn't have children. Their good son had his inheritance cut off at the hands of Lu Xiru. Shopkeeper Luo's parents just found this place very annoying. They didn't want to deal with their relatives anymore and just wanted to find a place to hide quietly for a while. Everyone suddenly saw a figure dressed as a servant running over from a distance. "Aren't you someone from the third child's side? Why did you suddenly come back?" the third aunt of the Luo family asked casually. Shopkeeper Luo's boy ran all the way over and said, panting to the people present, "Chief, we are very happy. Our family is very happy." Upon hearing this, the Luo family immediately became energetic and all gathered around. But Shopkeeper Luo's parents fell behind because they were in a bad mood. "Our third young mistress has been granted a marriage by the Queen Mother, and she has been rewarded with many good things. Our third young master is also very honored," Shopkeeper Luo's boy said loudly. Ah, when everyone heard this, they suddenly exclaimed. "After all, I have only heard of the Queen Mother granting marriages to young masters and young ladies of high-ranking officials, but rarely to merchants. This is a first for the Luo family." The head of the Luo family couldn't care less about the people around him. He grabbed the boy's hand and asked, "What is going on? Tell me clearly." The boy shook his head and said, "We were at the Gu family. When we were about to go out, someone from the palace suddenly came. The third young lady didn't even know what was going on. The Gu family was also confused when they received the order. Patriarch, what are you going to do? No, you should go back and ask the third young master and the third young lady, they must know better than the younger one." Shopkeeper Luo's parents were suddenly pushed to the front by other clan members. "Congratulations, who would have thought that you could marry a daughter-in-law who comes with the Queen Mother's wedding decree?" Shopkeeper Luo's parents were still angry at first, but when they heard this, their minds became dizzy. "My daughter-in-law? Are you talking about my daughter-in-law?" Luo's father asked again and again. The other Luo family members were also beaming with joy. Although it was Lu Xiru who was appreciated by the Queen Mother, the Luo family got this honor. As businessmen, the Luo family has always been the best at speculation. As long as they seize the opportunity, they will cling to it like a snake on a stick. So what if I was given a marriage by the Queen Mother? I'm just a second married woman who can't have children, the fourth aunt of the Luo family muttered in a low voice. Luo's mother had a very good ear, and she immediately rushed to the fourth aunt of the Luo family and said loudly, "My daughter-in-law is getting married, and the Queen Mother has given her permission to marry her. Do you have a niece?" Fourth Aunt Luo couldn't help but said, "Your daughter-in-law can't give birth to a child." Luo's mother still repeated loudly, "She has a marriage decree from the Queen Mother. She has a dowry given by the Queen Mother. Does your niece have one?" Fourth Aunt Luo. All the dissatisfaction that the Luo family's parents had with Lu Xiru disappeared because of this great honor. The couple was no longer as dejected as before, now they all held their heads high, like generals who had won a battle. The head of the Luo family originally wanted to tell these two people to be kind to their daughter-in-law, but when they saw the two of them going crazy, they recited loudly when they met, "My daughter-in-law has a marriage decree from the Queen Mother." The head of the Luo family suddenly felt that this was unnecessary. These two people were quite able to comfort themselves. When the newlyweds who missed the auspicious time finally entered the Luo family, they were faced with the high enthusiasm of all relatives. The parents of the shopkeeper Luo did not even sit in the hall, but ran over in person, squeezed out the bridesmaids who were originally accompanying them, and supported the newlyweds on the left and right. "As long as you two are fine, we will be satisfied," Luo's father said with a smile. "It's okay not to have children. Having children hurts your body. When the time comes, there are so many children in the family for you to choose from." Luo's mother was like a different person. Lu Xiru still remembered the picky eyes and arrogant attitude of the couple when she saw them half a month ago. Now, even if she couldn't see their expressions through the red veil, she could feel that the two people's attitudes had changed drastically. The wedding banquet on the Gu family side was lunch. As the banquet came to an end, the guests gradually left the table and said goodbye. As close relatives of the Gu family, the Sun family had already left, and there was still one guest who did not leave. Gu Mingda and his wife did not urge him, but they suddenly realized that they did not know this man. This man was tall and had an ordinary look, even rough. He was wearing an ordinary silk dress, and there was no sense of embarrassment in his movements. His eyes were full of frost, as if he had experienced many things. While the Gu family was looking at this man was also looking at the Gu family. He poured himself a glass of wine and then raised his glass to Gu Mingda. Since the visitor was a guest, Gu Mingda could not say anything, but just returned a glass. Gu Mingda nodded, and suddenly saw that the palms of the man's hands were full of calluses. "Master Gu, I have heard of you for a long time," the tall man said with a smile. "You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment." After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shenshen. Chapter 379. Gu Mingda instantly understood in his heart that the person in front of him was a martial arts practitioner. He lowered his head and saw the boots on the tall man's feet, with a look of understanding on his face. "It's a joy to marry my sister today. The general is coming here. This family is really going to shine," Gu Mingda said with cupped hands. The tall man raised his eyebrows and said, "Sir, you are really smart. You actually know who I am." When the other Gu family members around Gu Mingda heard this, they all looked at a loss. Gu Mingda said, "The general is wearing military boots." General Xie laughed loudly after hearing this and said, "Master Gu is very observant. No wonder he is the top scorer in high school." When the Gu family encountered water bandits when they entered Beijing, even though Xie Chuan was seriously injured, the man never showed up. This was the first time Gu Mingda saw him. Even though he was unhappy, he still asked politely, "General Xie, what are you doing today? Are you satisfied with the food?" The tall man nodded and said, "Xie has rarely had such a satisfying meal in so many years. It's just that he came uninvited and was offended." When Gu Mingda heard this, he felt relieved and thought to himself that this person didn't seem to be such an unreasonable person. The next second, General Xie's eyes fell on the head of the person next to the Gu family, and he instantly became extremely fierce. "Why are you still standing there? If you don't come over here, are you waiting for me to invite you?" General Xie said coldly. Gu Mingda immediately said, "General Xie, if you teach your children too strongly and harshly, it may be counterproductive." General Xie said, "Mr. Gu, there is a saying in the sage book you read, which is that if jade is not carved, it cannot be used. Some children are born and need to be carved with knives and swords before they have any chance of becoming talented. If they are not carved, they will not become useful. I'm afraid it's just like the weeds on the roadside, it makes no sound when you step on it." Niu Niu held Xie Chuan's hand tightly. The little girl could tell that Xie Chuan had become nervous since this man appeared in front of others. "Brother, don't worry about this bad guy, Daddy will protect us," the little girl said with absolute certainty. A bitter smile appeared on Xie Chuan's face and he said, "My dear, you are still young, you don't understand." When Niu Niu heard this, her face was filled with doubts. She tilted her head and said, "If you encounter bad guys, just let your dad beat them away. Why do you look so embarrassed?" Xie Chuan said helplessly, "But the bad guy in your mouth is my father." When the little girl heard this, her face seemed to be struck by lightning, and her whole body looked like a cracked stone statue. Xie Chuan was originally feeling heavy because of his father's appearance, but because of the little girl's stupid expression at the moment, he felt as if a corner of the gloom had been dispelled, and he didn't seem to feel so uncomfortable anymore. That's all, for him, his days in the Gu family were like a dream. This was a beautiful family that he had never imagined existed. How he wished that he could be the child of the Gu family. But unfortunately, his surname is Xie. The sprouts of grass and trees can push up rocks. It seems that everyone can step on it, but it is actually extremely tough, Gu Mingda said to General Xie at this time. General Xie raised his eyebrows slightly and said, Master Gu is a scholar, and he may believe in the idea that there is no distinction between education and distinction, but we warriors are different. When we go to the battlefield, if our skills are not good and our swords are blind, we may lose our lives. I don't know why. General Xie did not give Gu Mingda another chance to refute, but said to Xie Xin Chuan, do you want me to tell you the same thing a second time? When Xie Xin Chuan heard this shouting, he lowered his head slightly and took a step forward. Then, he was held by a small hand again. Although Niu Niu has not yet digested the information she just received, it does not deter her desire to protect Xie Xin Chuan. The little girl ran 2 steps quickly, stood in front of Xie Xin Chuan, and said to General Xie, he is my brother. He wants to stay in my house. He can't go with you. The general, who had been on the battlefield for a long time, had lost countless lives on his hands. General Xie just looked downcast, and the ferocious aura in his body was almost overflowing. The little girl had never seen such a scene before, and her face suddenly turned pale. Xie Xin Chuan hurriedly held the little girl in his arms. Niu, don't be afraid, it's okay. Although the little girl's whole body was shaking, she still seemed to cheer herself up. Don't be afraid, Niu is not afraid at all, I want to protect my brother. Seeing the brother and sister like this, Gu Mingda couldn't help but said to General Xie, the children are still young, so it is better to continue to live in my house for a while. General Xie saw the excitement of the Gu family from beginning to end today. He not only saw the marriage between 2 ordinary people granted by the Queen Mother, but also saw the closeness between Niu Niu and Li Shunfu. Others did not know Li Shunfu, but he had seen him before. One year, he was ordered to escort the Queen Mother to the Huiguo Temple in the suburbs of Beijing to offer incense and pray for blessings. Li Shunfu also accompanied the Queen Mother and was said to be the most trusted eunuch chief around the Queen Mother. General Xie had previously known that Niu Niu came to the palace to pray for blessings and recruit children, but he did not know that this little girl had such ability that the Queen Mother valued her so much. It was precisely for this reason that he suppressed himself and waited until the wedding banquet was over before planning to take Xie Xin Chuan away. Even until now, he was negotiating with the Gu family and had no intention of falling out. Master Gu, my son began to sharpen his muscles and bones when he was 3 years old, practiced martial arts at the age of 5, and learned good marksmanship. From the moment he was born, he was destined to belong to the battlefield, and the capital city is peaceful and prosperous. But now his injuries have healed. After such a long rest, you should come back to Binzhou with me, General Xie said. Gu Mingda frowned slightly, his face full of reluctance. Xie Xin Chuan bent down and said to Niu seriously, my dear, I will follow my father to Binzhou. My leaving the capital does not mean that we are no longer a family. It's just that I belong to the battlefield. Niu had tears in her eyes. She was too young to understand the meaning of parting. I went to Binzhou, just like you entered the palace. Although you have to enter the palace to accompany the Queen Mother, you will come out sooner or later. The same is true for me. I will come back sooner or later, Xie Xin Chuan tried to explain to the little girl. The little girl barely understood, but she was still very sad. She cried and said, but when I was in the palace, I really missed you very much. If you went to Binzhou, would you miss us very much too? Looking at the little girl's tears and nose covering her whole little face, Xie Xin Chuan felt his nose sour. Looking back on the time when he was a son of the Gu family, it felt like a dream. A real man should be strong and unyielding. Why do you have to act like a child? General Xie said with a cold face. Xie Xingchuan's body stiffened. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shenshen. Chapter 380. But the little girl suddenly stretched out her hand, touched Xie Xingchuan's face, and said, "Can't a man cry? Don't they have anything to be unhappy about? A man doesn't shed tears lightly. Even if he is sad, he has to hold them back," General Xie said in a matter-of-fact tone. Niu tilted her head, looked at him, and said, "A man is different from others." General Xie nodded. Niu said, "Can't cry, can't laugh, can't make trouble? Can't you still eat?" General Xie choked. He suddenly felt that there was something wrong with him, otherwise why would he be arguing with a girl less than 7 years old? The little girl was still holding Xie Xingchuan at this time, and said with a worried look, "Brother, you can stop crying, but you must not stop eating." In the eyes of a little girl, eating is always a matter bigger than the sky. Xie Xingchuan's original feeling of reluctance was suddenly diluted. "Okay, brother, I promise you that no matter how big things happen, I will never forget to eat," Xie Xingchuan assured Niu very seriously. Even though he knew that the little girl was reluctant to leave, Xie Xingchuan finally walked to his father silently. Xie Xingchuan and the Gu family had only been together for 3 months in total. Facing separation at this time, the Gu family was also very reluctant to leave. Grandpa, grandma, godfather, godmother, eldest brother, younger brother, dear baby. This was the first time Xie Xingchuan said so many words in one breath. Ms. Gu wiped her tears and said, "He seems to be only 13 years old. Why is he about to go to the battlefield?" Although Xie Xingchuan is now taller than Gu Mingde, his age is there. Everyone can't understand why General Xie is so cruel and rushes his son to go to the battlefield at such a young age. General Xie ignored these questions and stood on the street corner waiting for his son impatiently. "Peace, keep peace." Father Gu suddenly extended a hand to Xie Xingchuan. Xie Xingchuan held the old man's hand, but suddenly found something extra. It is a piece wooden sign carved from wood, the size of a baby's palm. "Take it, the children of the Gu family all have one, carved by your grandfather himself," Gu Mingde said. Xie Xingchuan's heart softened, and he felt as if his whole body was wrapped in clouds. General Xie coughed lightly at the corner of the street. Xie Xingchuan knew that his father was urging him. He knelt down, kowtowed 3 times to the elders of the Gu family in a solemn manner, and then turned around and left carrying a large package. The package was full of snacks that the crazy girl had prepared for Niu. Because Xie Xingchuan left suddenly and there was no time to prepare things, Niu generously gave him her snacks. "Brother, you must come back safely, I'll be waiting for you at home," Niu shouted at Xie Xingchuan's leaving figure. Xie Xingchuan turned around and nodded heavily to the little girl. It wasn't until the figures of the father and son disappeared at the corner of the street that the Gu family walked back. "I don't know why the war is so urgent that I can't even stay for one night and have to leave immediately," Zhang Yuniang said in a low voice. Gu Mingde vaguely heard some rumors and said, "I heard something from my colleagues at the banquet today. It seems that the Binzhou water bandits are causing trouble and making life difficult for the people on the boats." Zhang Yuniang immediately became worried. If this happens, wouldn't it be very dangerous? He is still a child. Gu Mingde patted his wife's shoulder reassuringly. "The Xie family has strict upbringing. If you follow your biological father, you will not let him have any accidents." If a father with a less ugly face had come to pick up his son, Gu Mingde would probably think that Xie Xingchuan went to the battlefield to get gold. But looking at General Xie's stern look now, I couldn't tell what it would be like on the battlefield. Before the couple could figure out what happened with Xie Chuan, someone came from the palace. The person who came was someone the couple didn't reject at all. The humble minister Gu Mingde brought his family to pay homage to His Majesty. Gu Mingde did not expect that the emperor would personally come out to pick him up. The emperor said casually, "Today I went out of the city to visit an old friend, and I happened to come over to take the child back." The emperor's tone was as if Niu Niu was a child in the palace. Gu Mingde felt uncomfortable, but the person he was facing was the emperor, and he couldn't resist at all. "My dear, come back to the palace with me." The emperor stretched out his hand to Niu Niu. Niu Niu looked back at her family, feeling full of reluctance. Mrs. Gu also didn't expect that receiving the Queen Mother's decree today was not enough. The emperor actually came in person. At this time, the old lady was so frightened that her whole body was shaking. "I want to have dinner at home. Grandma told me that she will cook my favorite dish tonight," Niu Niu said. The emperor asked casually, "What is your favorite dish?" "Ginger cake," Niu Niu replied obediently. Although the emperor loved Niu Niu, he was not the Queen Mother, and he did not always pay attention to Niu Niu's preferences like the Queen Mother, so this was the first time he heard about this. Like everyone else, he frowned and said, "Why do you like to eat such strange things?" When Gu Mingde heard this, he immediately said to the side, "Your Majesty, there is no distinction between high and low food in the world. The price is only determined by the difficulty of obtaining it. There are thousands of people with different tastes, and everyone has different tastes. Niu Niu he has loved eating ginger since he was a child. Ginger can activate blood and dispel cold, so the child has always been strong and rarely gets sick." The emperor glanced at Gu Mingde with a half smile, and he could naturally tell that Gu Mingde was speaking to himself on the surface, but in fact he was trying to comfort Niu Niu that she was no different from other people. In fact, this is also a vague accusation that the emperor should not say that the child is strange. "Gu Iking, you have a fatherly heart," the emperor sighed, not caring about Gu Mingde's little thoughts. Gu Mingde wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. The emperor was majestic. He had been impulsive just now and said those words. Fortunately, the emperor didn't care. "There are also ginger cakes in the palace. I will ask the imperial kitchen to arrange them for you," the emperor said. Niu Niu shook her head. "It's different. It only tastes like home when it's made by family members." The emperor frowned slightly. Gu Mingde knew that he should persuade Niu Niu to be sensible at this time, but he couldn't say it. His daughter entered the palace at such a young age. Even though the Queen Mother loved her, the palace was not as comfortable as at home. The little girl just wanted to have more meals at home. He really couldn't bear to make his daughter uncomfortable. "Uncle Emperor, I really want to have dinner at home. After dinner, I will go back to the palace." "Okay," Niu Niu begged. Qian Rongsheng reminded in a low voice from the side, "Niu Niu, His Majesty has made a special trip to pick you up. There are many things in the palace, so we can't delay. If we wait until the palace door is locked, we will be in trouble." When the little girl heard this, she was so sad that she almost cried. On the other hand, Mrs. Gu, who was shaking like chaff, hesitated again and again, and took the initiative to say, Your Majesty, I will go to the kitchen to make gingerbread. Niu Niu, you can take it with you to eat on the way." The emperor nodded slightly. Niu Niu ran from the emperor's side to Zhang Yuniang's arms. Since returning to the palace was a foregone conclusion, the little girl just wanted to stay with her mother for a while longer. There was no one around the emperor, and he felt a little disappointed. His eyes fell on Gu Zhao and Gu Yan, and he said, "Gu Iking, your two sons look very handsome, and they have your style." Gu Yan's expression remained unchanged, but when Gu Zhao heard this, he opened his clear and innocent eyes, thought of some possibility with his not-so-smart little head, and said, "Does your Majesty want me to enter the palace too? I can exchange with Niu Niu."